Hey guys, what is up? Public here back with another video doing some raid testing for the new raid Amir Thrill in patch 10.2. So today we're checking out the Council of Dreams boss. This was the third boss that we tested for raid testing on heroic difficulty. This is their council boss of the raid, and it has a few kind of fun, like gimmicky mechanics, kind of nice. So gonna talk a little bit about the boss, kind of my thoughts on it, and playing a shadow, how that felt, and kind of some choices I made on talents and that kind of thing. So diving in, like usually, council bosses, Shadow Priest do pretty well on. This is going to be no different. What is a little interesting about this boss, so it is 3 targets. So it has a bear, a dryad, and then like a fairy thing, sprite guy. And basically, the trick though is they're not stacked. So unlike the council boss that we had inside of Vault, these guys you can basically 2 of them are moving around constantly throughout the fight and jumping around. And then one of them is the tanked boss, which is the giant bear. Now, important, the bear has roughly like twice as much health as the other 2 do. So if he has like 200k, each of the little ones have 100k. So that is kind of like our priority target for this boss, although I'll kind of explain how I played it a little differently. And so basically what you can do is you can move the bear to one of the other 2 mobs. So I think the strat that we kind of landed on was basically every time one of the mobs jumped away, the tank tried to move them to the other boss that had the higher of the 2 health. That way we'd try to like keep them even. So for the most part, from like a damage perspective, you're able to do like 2 target cleave and then have a 3rd target spread off in the distance. So that's pretty important because that does kind of impact kind of some choices that we would take because it is stacked cleave. So what worked well here? So for example, I think Shadow Crash just makes sense because it's just at 2 targets. You're just saving yourself a few dot refreshes here and there. It is a little bit to maintain, especially without Void Bolt inside of cooldowns, because we're running Dark Ascension still. And the other thing too is with our 4-piece, we are throwing like empowered, enhanced Shadow Crashes at the bosses, right? So getting a buffed versions of that, even at 2 targets, is a significant gain over Shadow Word Pain. So we like that. So definitely pick Shadow Crash on this boss, is what it's looking like. I did experiment with running Isle of Nooth, which is the other thing that we would typically take in like stacked cleave environments. But if you're in a world where there's only 2 targets that are really getting that splash damage out from N'Zoth, it was only like 2.5% or at most of my damage. So I opted to kind of move points around to get more priority target damage and what I think is just more effective cleave on this boss by dropping N'Zoth. So still going to be kind of testing some things out. You can test that exact situation in SimC, although we're still kind of tweaking it. But yeah, I don't think N'Zoth is going to end up here. And then I chose to run with the Destroyed Reality, which is the default talent most often anyways inside of raiding. So what that means is you're kind of playing this kind of like a hybrid case where you're trying to spread around your dots, including Devouring Plague. So what you'll see me do in the footage in the background, although I didn't have boss frames, so my dotting was not as good as it should be. But basically, you want to keep Vampiric Touch, Shadow Word Pain on all 3 at all times. And then every time you get enough Insanity for Devouring Plague, you should apply Devouring Plague. And I was more or less kind of like tab dotting. So every time I got my 55 Insanity, I would tab DP, and then that's my new priority target. Now, obviously, towards the end of the fight, you do need to be more careful with that because if the bosses die, it starts like a 10 or 15 second timer. If you don't kill all of them at the same time, the ones that went below 0 heal like 50%. So because of that, as the fight's going down, you can see I am kind of preferring some targets over others, even if it's not like DPS efficient to do so. Like I might even start funneling on a target that doesn't have Devouring Plague on, just because it needs to die and it has significantly more health than the others. So definitely on this boss, make sure that you have good boss frames and you can easily track your dots on each one. And then also what's important is not only tracking the percentage health of the bosses, you'll also want kind of an abbreviated amount of how much health that they have. And the reason is, like I said, because the bear has like twice as much health as the other ones, you don't just want to keep their percents even. In fact, you actually want to get the bear's percent much lower than the others to start with before you're ready to do the final burn, because he just has more raw health. And again, they need to hit 0 at the same time. So yeah, that's kind of like from a setup perspective how this boss works. So talking about from like a gameplay perspective, in addition to kind of moving your devouring plagues around, the other thing you need to be very conscious of is as the mobs are moving around, you kind of want to do your best to be in the central cluster of them. And specifically, the reason is Psychic Link has a range of 40 yards. So even if you have dots on a target that's more than 40 yards away, they're not going to get the Psychic Link damage. You need to make sure that you are within 40 yards of all three of the bosses at all times. So your positioning here is really, really important to make sure, one, you're dodging mechanics or getting to where you need to be if you're soaking something or whatever else. But you also want to make sure that you're in range of all targets. And again, it's going to be a little chaotic because these mobs are jumping around. I did find that Pip especially does, I think he specifically is resetting to the center of the room. So generally speaking, if you find yourself like wandering off too far away from the center, you're probably going to pull yourself back, or you might have to barrel across the room to chase the Dryad specifically. So definitely something to keep in mind here, and just keeps track of everything else as normal. So now getting into the boss and how that actually played out. So like every single boss has a few mechanics, and then they also have like what you can call like an ultimate mechanic. So you're kind of more or less dealing with those throughout the fight. Generally speaking, it's pretty straightforward. It's nothing too crazy, although it can look a little chaotic at first. The thing to keep in mind is periodically throughout the fight, you will get turned into a duck and you get polymorphed, and then you have to run around and pick up some of the goo off the ground, which, one, clears space off the ground, and then two, you can get out of that early, which is something I did not know until towards the end of testing. There's a new action button that comes up and gets rid of the duck early if you'd like, which is useful to actually break the bear's ultimate ability, which when he goes into his rage mode, you basically have to polymorph him and turn him into a duck to stop him from killing the raid. The other guys also have a few other ones. Notably, I think there's like a song mechanic, Song of the Dragons or something, and you'll see me having to like specifically go into the green circle to make sure that I don't get stunned. But otherwise, it's going to be a pretty traditional council boss fight. It does run kind of like long. It doesn't appear that there was like any kind of hardened rage, other than you're just going to have more people that need to soak mechanics. Debuffs are going to start ticking out of control, that kind of thing. So I know like we were pulling this boss, and if someone died really early, like we were getting 10-minute fight timers and something crazy. You just got to make sure that you're positioning correctly and getting really efficient cleave off, so that you can kill it in kind of a good amount of time. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of not having a great time. So yeah, that's the council boss. I'm not sure how much is left, but I'll let things play out if not. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video as I do more raid testing. See ya.